During a trip, an orphaned girl got lost deep in the forest. While searching for the right path, she noticed a tree. This was no ordinary tree. Inside it, there seemed to be something like a nest. When the orphaned girl decided to enter the tree, she had no idea that the events about to unfold there would have such a profound impact on her fate, her future, and nearly the fate of the entire world. Before we continue with the video, have you ever gotten lost in a forest? Share your experience in the comments. Rain fell through the forest canopy in silver threads, turning the earth soft and muddy beneath Hannah's feet. She was 8 years old, and she was lost. The field trip from Riverside Children's Home was supposed to be simple, a nature walk through Miller's Forest, lunch by the creek back before dark. But Hannah had wandered away from the group to follow a butterfly with wings like stained glass, and when she looked up, everyone was gone. She'd called out, walked back the way she thought she'd come. Called again. Nothing but trees and rain and the growing certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. Beside her, Milo, a golden retriever who'd been her constant companion for 2 years, pressed close, his fur already soaked through. The dog had been her father's before the accident. Now, he was all Hannah had left of her family. "I'm sorry, boy," Hannah whispered, kneeling to wrap her arms around his neck. "I didn't mean to get us lost." Milo's tail wagged once, slowly. "It wasn't your fault," the gesture seemed to say. "We'll be okay." But would they? The rain was getting heavier. The temperature was dropping. Hannah's jacket was thin, meant for a supervised walk, not an overnight in the wilderness. And somewhere behind them, she could hear voices, the group leaders calling her name, but the sound was distant and getting more distant. She had wandered farther than she'd thought. Hannah tried to follow the voices back, but the forest was confusing. Every tree looked the same. Every path seemed to loop back on itself. And the rain made everything harder, washing away footprints, turning the world into gray mist. She was shivering now. Her teeth chattered. Milo whined and nudged her hand. "We need shelter," his intelligent eyes seemed to say. "We need to get out of this rain." Hannah looked around desperately. There, through the trees. Was that a cliff face? Somewhere they could huddle under an overhang and wait for rescuers? She stumbled toward it, Milo leading the way. And that's when she realized it wasn't a cliff at all. It was a tree. But not just any tree. The tree was massive, so large that Hannah's mind struggled to comprehend its scale. The trunk was wider than her entire house had been before the fire. The roots were like roads, twisting and diving into the earth, and the canopy, what she could see of it through the rain, seemed to touch the clouds. It looked ancient. Older than the forest, older than anything Hannah had ever seen. And there, in the trunk at ground level, was an opening, not a door, not carved or built, just a natural gap in the bark, large enough for a child and a dog to squeeze through. Like the tree had grown around the space deliberately, leaving an entrance for anyone who needed shelter. Milo didn't hesitate. He trotted toward the opening, looked back at Hannah as if to say, "Are you coming?" and disappeared inside. Hannah followed. The moment she stepped through the opening, everything changed. The sound of rain disappeared. The cold vanished. The air inside the tree was warm and dry and smelled faintly of honey and old wood. Hannah blinked, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. The interior of the tree was hollow, a circular space about 15 feet across, with walls of living wood that curved up and up until they disappeared into darkness above. Light filtered down from somewhere high overhead, soft and golden, illuminating the space with a gentle glow. But it wasn't empty. In the center of the floor sat an object that made no sense, that couldn't possibly be there but was anyway. An hourglass. Large, maybe 3 feet tall, made of brass and glass, sitting on an ornate wooden stand. And inside, sand flowed from the upper chamber to the lower. Except the sand was flowing upward, against gravity, against physics, against everything Hannah knew about how the world worked. She stared at it, unable to look away. The sand was beautiful, not brown or tan like beach sand, but silver and gold and colors that seemed to shift as they moved. And as each grain fell up into the upper chamber, it made a tiny sound like a bell. So quiet, Hannah almost couldn't hear it. Milo sat beside the hourglass, watching it with his head tilted. Then he looked at Hannah and barked once. Touch it. Hannah didn't know how she knew that's what the dog meant, but she knew. Her hand reached out before her brain could tell it not to. Her fingers touched the cool glass of the hourglass, and the tree shivered. It was subtle, just the faintest tremor running through the wood, like a breath or a heartbeat. But Hannah felt it all the way to her bones. The light from above brightened for just a moment. The sound of the sand became louder, more like music than bells. And when Hannah pulled her hand back and turned toward the entrance, she saw that the rain outside had stopped. "Come on, Milo," she said quietly. "We should go. Someone's probably looking for us." They stepped out of the tree, and everything was different. The rain was gone, yes, but that wasn't the only thing that had changed. The forest looked younger. The trees were smaller, the undergrowth thinner. And there, where there should have been a hiking trail maintained by the Park Service, was just virgin forest, untouched by human hands. Hannah turned in a slow circle, her heart starting to pound. Milo. What happened? The dog whined, pressing against her legs. In the distance, maybe a quarter-mile away, Hannah could see something that definitely hadn't been there before. A small cabin, built from rough-hewn logs with smoke curling from a stone chimney. Someone lived there, someone who might help her. Hannah walked toward the cabin with Milo at her side, her mind trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Had she gotten so turned around in the rain that she'd wandered into a completely different part of the forest, somewhere remote enough that people still lived in log cabins without electricity? But no. She could still see the giant tree behind her, exactly where it had been. This was the same place, just changed. The cabin's door opened before Hannah could knock. An old woman stood in the doorway, maybe 70, maybe 80, with white hair and eyes that were impossibly bright and aware. She wore simple clothes, hand-stitched, the kind of thing Hannah had only seen in history books. The woman looked at Hannah for a long moment, then she smiled. "Finally," she said softly. "Someone came." Hannah took a step back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. I'm just lost. And I saw your cabin, and I thought maybe you could help me find my way back to—" "You're not lost, child," the woman interrupted gently. "You're exactly where you need to be. Come inside. We have much to discuss." Something in the woman's voice made Hannah trust her, or maybe it was the exhaustion and confusion catching up. Either way, Hannah followed her into the cabin, Milo padding quietly behind. The interior was simple, one room with a fireplace, a bed, a table, 2 chairs. Everything looked handmade, well used, cared for. There were books on shelves, jars of dried herbs, a spinning wheel in the corner. The woman gestured to one of the chairs. "Sit, you must have questions." Hannah sat, Milo lying at her feet. "Where am I? What happened to the forest? And how did you know someone was coming?" "Where are you?" The woman smiled. "The same place you've always been. Miller's Forest, at the base of the giant tree. As for when," she paused, "that's more complicated." "When?" "The tree you found, the one with the hourglass inside. It's very old. Older than this forest, older than this country, and it has a peculiar property. It doesn't experience time the way the rest of the world does." Hannah's grip tightened on the edge of her chair. "I don't understand." "Inside the tree, time passes differently, more slowly. Those who shelter there don't age as quickly as those outside. And when they touch the hourglass," the woman leaned forward, "they can step through time, not far, not decades or centuries, but enough to lose track of the world they knew." "That's impossible." "Is it?" The woman gestured to the window. "You saw the forest change when you left the tree. You felt it happen, and now you're here, talking to me, someone who shouldn't exist in the time you came from." Hannah's mind reeled. "Who are you?" "My name is Margaret Thorne, and 60 years ago, by the outside world's count, I was a child like you, lost in the forest, found the tree, stepped inside for shelter, and when I touched the hourglass—" She paused. "I've been waiting ever since." "Waiting for what?" "For someone else to find the tree. Because that's how it works, child. The tree protects those who need protecting, children who are lost or scared or running from something terrible. It gives them shelter, gives them time, literal time to heal. But someone must stay. Someone must be the guardian. Hannah stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. No, I can't. I'm not asking you to stay, Margaret said gently. I'm explaining what is. You found the tree because you needed shelter. You'll leave the tree when you're ready. But know this. While you shelter there, time outside will pass more slowly for you than for the world. Days inside might be minutes outside, or vice versa. The tree decides based on what you need. Why? Hannah whispered. Why does it do this? Margaret stood and moved to the window, looking out at the forest. I've had 60 years to wonder about that. My best guess? Because someone long ago made it so. Someone who knew that children need protection, need time to heal, need safe places in a dangerous world. And they gave us this tree. She turned back to Hannah. You'll return to your time soon. The hourglass will bring you back. But I wanted you to understand what you found. Wanted you to know that the tree is real, and it's there for any child who needs it. But what about you? Hannah asked. If I go back, are you stuck here? Margaret smiled sadly. I've lived a good life, Hannah. Quiet, peaceful. I've read every book in this cabin 3 times. I've watched seasons change. I've kept the tree safe for others who might need it. I'm tired now, ready to rest. But when you return to your time, I'll finally be able to leave the tree's influence. I'll age the years I didn't age while I was here, and I'll be at peace, knowing the tree is still protected, still there for the next child who needs shelter. Hannah felt tears on her cheeks. I don't want you to die. Everyone dies, child. I'm just blessed to know mine will have meant something. Margaret crossed the room and took Hannah's hands. Now listen carefully. When you're ready to return, go back to the tree. Touch the hourglass again. It will bring you home, and when you do, remember what you learned here. The time is a gift, and safety is precious, and there are places in this world where lost children can find shelter. Milo stood, tail wagging slowly. It's time. Hannah hugged Margaret, this stranger who somehow felt like family, and whispered, Thank you. Thank you, child, for setting me free. Hannah and Milo walked back to the giant tree as the sun set over Margaret's cabin. The journey felt different now, purposeful. Hannah understood that she wasn't lost anymore. She was exactly where she needed to be, learning exactly what she needed to learn. The tree was still there, ancient and enormous, with the entrance waiting. Hannah stepped inside. The hourglass still sat in the center, sand flowing upward in defiance of gravity. She placed both hands on the glass. The tree shivered again, stronger this time. The light from above blazed bright, and the sand in the hourglass reversed direction, flowing downward now, normal, as time itself corrected course. When Hannah blinked, she was outside the tree again, and voices were calling her name. Hannah, Hannah, where are you? The search party, adults from the children's home, park rangers with flashlights, emerged from the trees. They looked worried, but not panicked, like she'd only been missing for minutes, not hours. There you are, one of the counselors rushed forward. We turned around and you were gone. Are you okay? I'm fine, Hannah said quietly. I just got turned around, but Milo helped me find shelter until you found me. The counselor hugged her. Thank God you're safe. As they walked back toward the buses, Hannah looked back at the giant tree one last time. And there, just for a moment, she saw an old woman standing beside it, Margaret, smiling. And then she faded, like mist in sunlight, finally released from her decades-long vigil. Hannah whispered, Rest well. Milo barked once, soft and sad and somehow understanding. The tree remained, patient and eternal, waiting for the next lost child who would need its shelter. And Hannah carried its secret in her heart. 3 months passed after Hannah found the tree. Life at Riverside Children's Home continued as it always had. Wake at 6, breakfast at 7, school lessons in the common room, chores after lunch, dinner at 5, lights out at 8. The same routine, day after day, each one bleeding into the next until Hannah couldn't tell Tuesdays from Thursdays. But everything felt different now. Hannah would sit by the window during quiet time, staring out at the distant tree line of Miller's Forest, thinking about the giant tree with the impossible hourglass inside, about Margaret, who'd lived 60 years in a cabin that existed in a different time, about sand flowing upward and the way the world had changed when she'd stepped back outside. Had it been real? Or had she imagined the whole thing, a confused, frightened 8-year-old lost in the rain, her mind creating a fantasy to cope with being alone? But no. Milo remembered. She could tell by the way the golden retriever would sometimes stand at the window beside her, looking toward the forest with the same distant expression. He'd been there too. He knew the truth. "Hannah, you're daydreaming again," Mrs. Caldwell, the home's director, said one afternoon during lessons. She wasn't cruel, just tired, responsible for 23 children with not enough staff or funding. "Please pay attention." "Sorry," Hannah murmured, turning back to her math worksheet, but the numbers swam before her eyes. She couldn't focus, couldn't stop thinking about the tree. That night, lying in her bunk bed with Milo curled on the floor below, Hannah whispered to the darkness, "Do you think other kids will find it? The tree?" Milo's tail thumped once against the floor. "Yes." "Do you think they'll understand what it's for, that it's there to protect them?" Another tail thump. "They will." Hannah closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her dreams were full of giant trees and hourglasses and old women who'd waited their entire lives for someone to set them free. It happened on a gray Tuesday in November. A new boy arrived at Riverside, 10 years old, thin and quiet, with bruises on his arms he wouldn't explain. His name was Marcus, and he barely spoke to anyone for the first week. Hannah recognized the look in his eyes. She'd seen it in the mirror after her parents died, the look of someone who'd lost something precious and didn't know how to exist in a world without it. She tried to talk to him during meals, during recreation time, during the brief moments when Mrs. Caldwell wasn't watching and the older kids weren't demanding attention. But Marcus would just shake his head and walk away, until the day he ran. It was during a group walk to the park, the same kind of supervised outing where Hannah had gotten lost. The counselors were distracted, counting heads, organizing activities, and Marcus simply walked away from the group, slipped into the trees, and disappeared. The counselors panicked, radios crackled, search, protocols activated. But Hannah knew with absolute certainty where Marcus had gone. "He's in the forest," she told Mrs. Caldwell. "Miller's forest. He's looking for somewhere safe." "How do you know that?" "Because that's where I went when I was lost, and I found." She stopped. How could she explain about the tree, about time moving differently, about Margaret and the hourglass? "I found shelter there. He will too." Mrs. Caldwell looked at her strangely, but called the search teams anyway, directing them toward Miller's forest. Hannah asked if she could come. "I know the forest. I can help find him." "Absolutely not. You're 8 years old. We're not risking another child." But that night, after lights out, Hannah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Marcus, alone in the forest, scared and hurt. What if he didn't find the tree? What if he froze in the November cold? Or what if he did find it and didn't understand what it was offering? Milo whined softly, sensing her agitation. Hannah made a decision. She slipped out of bed, put on her jacket and shoes, and whispered to Milo, "Come on, boy, we're going to find him." The children's home was easy to leave. Security was minimal, focused more on keeping dangerous people out than keeping children in. Hannah and Milo slipped through a basement window and ran toward the forest under a half-moon sky. She knew the way now. Even in darkness, even 3 months later, her feet remembered the path. Through the park, past the hiking trail, into the deeper woods where the trees grew ancient and strange, and there, like a mountain rising from the earth, was the giant tree. Marcus sat at its base, knees pulled to his chest, shivering in the cold. He looked up when Hannah approached, eyes wide with fear. "Did they send you?" he whispered. "Are you taking me back?" "No," Hannah said gently, sitting beside him. Milo immediately moved to Marcus's other side, offering warmth. "I came because I know about this place, about what it can do. It's just a tree. It's more than that." Hannah pointed to the entrance. "There's something inside, something that can help you. But you have to trust me." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. They crawled through the entrance together. The interior was exactly as Hannah remembered, warm, dry, softly lit by that sourceless golden glow, and in the center, the hourglass, with sand flowing upward in its eternal defiance of physics. Marcus stared at it, mouth open. What is that? Protection, Hannah said simply. Time works differently here. The tree keeps you safe, gives you time to heal. How do you know? Because I've been here before. When I was lost, the tree helped me. She didn't mention Margaret, didn't try to explain time travel. Marcus wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, she said, "You can stay here as long as you need. The tree will protect you. And when you're ready to face the world again, you just walk back out." Marcus moved closer to the hourglass, watching the sand flow upward. Why does it go the wrong way? Because time here isn't like time outside. Inside the tree, you get as much time as you need. Outside, barely any time passes at all. It wasn't quite true. Hannah had learned that time worked in more complicated ways than that, but it was true enough for Marcus to understand. He reached out and touched the glass, just as Hannah had months ago. The tree shivered, the light brightened, and Marcus gasped as he felt it, the sense of being held, being protected, being given space to breathe. "It's real," he whispered. "It's real," Hannah confirmed. They sat together in the tree for what felt like hours, but might have been minutes or might have been days. Hannah told Marcus about finding the tree during the rainstorm, about being scared and cold and thinking she'd never find her way home, about how the tree had given her exactly what she needed, shelter and time and the understanding that she wasn't alone. Marcus told her about his parents, who'd hurt him in ways he didn't have words for, about running away and being caught and ending up at Riverside, about feeling like he'd never be safe anywhere. "You're safe here," Hannah said, "for as long as you need. Will you stay with me?" Hannah thought about Mrs. Caldwell, probably frantic by now, another child missing, thought about the search teams combing the forest, but she also thought about Margaret, who'd stayed in the tree for 60 years because someone needed to be the guardian. "I'll stay," Hannah said, "until you're ready." Milo settled between them, warm and solid and loyal. The hourglass continued its impossible flow, and in the safety of the giant tree, two broken children found a moment of peace. Time inside the tree was strange. Hannah couldn't tell how long they'd been there. Her stomach didn't get hungry. She didn't get tired. The light never changed, always that same soft golden glow, like late afternoon sun filtered through honey. Marcus gradually opened up, talking about his fears and hopes and the things that haunted his dreams. Hannah listened, offered comfort when she could, and mostly just stayed present, a reminder that he wasn't alone. At some point, impossible to say when, Marcus fell asleep, leaning against Milo's side. The dog's breathing was slow and steady, a rhythm that seemed to match the flow of sand in the hourglass. Hannah stood and walked to the hourglass, studying it more carefully than she had during her first visit. The brass frame was covered in symbols she didn't recognize, not letters or numbers, but shapes that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The glass itself was impossibly clear, clearer than any glass she'd ever seen. And the sand was made of moments, she realized. Each grain was a second or a minute or an hour, flowing upward, giving time back to those who needed it most. She reached out and placed her hand on the glass again. The tree shivered. But this time something else happened. Hannah heard a voice, not with her ears, somewhere deeper, a voice like wind through leaves, like roots growing through earth, like centuries of quiet patience. "Thank you for bringing him here." "I didn't know what else to do," Hannah whispered. "You knew exactly what to do. You remembered. You understood. Are you the tree? I am what the tree protects, the space between seconds, the shelter in the storm. I am what was made to keep children safe." "Why me? Why did I find you?" "Because you needed shelter, and because you have the gift." "What gift?" "The ability to see what others miss, to understand that safety sometimes looks like magic, to care enough to come back." Hannah's hand trembled on the glass. "I don't want to be a guardian like Margaret. I don't want to wait 60 years alone." "You don't have to. The tree needs many guardians now, children who know the secret, who will bring others here when they need shelter, who will protect this place from those who would destroy it." Who would destroy it? Those who fear what they don't understand, those who want to control time instead of respecting it. They will come, eventually, and when they do, the tree will need children like you to stand as witnesses, to testify that this place is good, that it saves lives. Hannah thought about that, about being a guardian not by staying in the tree, but by carrying its secret out into the world, by finding lost children and bringing them here, by protecting the tree's existence. "I can do that," she said quietly. "I know." Marcus stirred, waking slowly. He looked around, seemed surprised to find himself still in the tree, then smiled, the first real smile Hannah had seen from him. "I had a good dream," he said, "about being safe." "You are safe," Hannah told him, "and when you're ready, we'll go back. Together." Marcus stood, walked to the entrance, and looked out at the forest. Through the opening, Hannah could see that it was still night, the same night they'd entered, probably. Only minutes had passed outside, even though they'd been in here for what felt like hours. "I'm ready," Marcus said, "but I want to come back. Is that allowed?" Hannah smiled. "The tree is always here, for anyone who needs it." They walked out together, Milo leading the way. The forest was quiet, peaceful, and in the distance, Hannah could see flashlights, the search teams still looking. "Over here," she called. "We're here. We're okay." The search teams rushed forward, relief and anger mixing on their faces. Mrs. Caldwell hugged both children, then immediately started scolding them for running off. But Hannah barely heard her. She was looking back at the giant tree, its massive trunk dark against the night sky. And she saw something that made her breath catch. There, carved into the bark, barely visible, were names, hundreds of names, thousands maybe, all the children who'd found shelter in the tree over centuries. And at the very top, freshly carved as if by invisible hands, were two new names, Hannah Marcus Guardians. Both of them now, keepers of the tree's secret. Marcus saw the names too. He reached out and squeezed Hannah's hand. "We'll protect it," he whispered. "Won't we?" "Always," Hannah promised. Milo barked once as if sealing the oath, and the giant tree stood silent and patient, waiting for the next lost child who would need its shelter. The next day, Hannah woke to find the children's home buzzing with whispered conversations. Another child had gone missing from a different home across town. A girl named Sophie, only 6 years old, who'd wandered away during a playground visit and hadn't been found. Search teams were combing the city. Amber alerts had been issued. Everyone was looking. But Hannah knew with that same deep certainty where Sophie would eventually go. Lost children were drawn to the tree, like Margaret had been, like Hannah had been, like Marcus. The tree called to them somehow, offered safety to those who needed it most. At breakfast, Marcus sat beside Hannah and whispered, "Do you think she'll find it, the tree?" "Yes," Hannah said, "and when she does, she'll be safe, just like we were." Should we tell someone about the tree? Hannah thought about that, about trying to explain to adults that there was a magical tree in Miller's Forest that existed outside of normal time. They'd think she was making it up, or they'd try to study it, control it, maybe even destroy it in their attempts to understand. "No," Hannah said finally. "The tree protects itself by staying secret. Only children can find it, only children who really need it." Marcus nodded slowly. "We're guardians now. That means keeping the secret and helping others find it when they need to." Over the next few weeks, Hannah and Marcus became inseparable. They sat together during lessons, worked on chores side by side, and spent quiet time by the window looking out toward Miller's Forest. They were waiting, watching, ready to help the next child who would need the tree. Sophie was found 3 days later, cold and hungry but unharmed, sleeping at the base of a giant tree in Miller's Forest. She couldn't explain how she'd survived 3 nights in November weather without freezing, could only say that she'd found a warm place and felt safe. The adults chalked it up to luck, to resilience, to the mysterious ways children sometimes survive impossible situations. But Hannah knew better. She saw Sophie at the park 2 weeks later, a small, quiet girl with dark hair and watchful eyes. And carved on her palm in what looked like charcoal but wouldn't wash away was a single symbol, the same symbol Hannah had seen on the hourglass's brass frame. Sophie saw Hannah looking and smiled shyly. Another guardian, another keeper of the tree's secret. The circle was growing. 9-year-old Hannah sat in Mrs. Caldwell's office, staring at the woman across the desk with growing dread. We're very excited about this opportunity, Mrs. Caldwell was saying, her smile bright but her eyes tired. Dr. Richard Vance is a renowned child psychologist. His research could help us better understand and support children who've experienced trauma. Hannah's hands clenched in her lap. Beside her chair, Milo whined softly, sensing her distress. He wants to interview some of our children, Mrs. Caldwell continued, particularly those who've had unusual experiences, like getting lost in Miller's Forest and somehow surviving conditions that should have been dangerous. Hannah's heart sank. She'd known this moment might come eventually. 6 children had been found near the giant tree over the past 6 months. Sophie, Marcus, 2 brothers named James and David, a girl called Aria, and most recently, a 10-year-old named Lucas. All of them had been missing for days. All of them found inexplicably unharmed at the base of the same massive tree. The adults were starting to notice the pattern. "I don't want to talk to a psychologist," Hannah said quietly. "I understand that therapy can be intimidating, but Dr. Vance is very kind. He just wants to understand how you survived your experience in the forest. It could help other children. I survived because I found shelter, that's all." "Hannah," Mrs. Caldwell's voice gentled, "you were lost in a rainstorm in October. The temperature that night dropped to 40 degrees. You were wearing a thin jacket. By all accounts, you should have developed hypothermia. But when the search team found you less than 2 hours after you'd wandered off, you were completely dry and showed no signs of exposure." "How do you explain that?" Hannah wanted to say. "I found a tree that exists outside of normal time, and inside it I was warm and safe and protected by something ancient and impossible. But she couldn't. The tree's secret had to be protected." "I don't know," she lied. "I just got lucky, I guess." Mrs. Caldwell sighed. "Well, Dr. Vance would like to speak with you anyway. Just a short interview. He'll be here tomorrow afternoon." That night, Hannah gathered the other guardians in the home's small library during free time. Marcus, Sophie, James, David, and Aria all crowded around a table in the corner while Hannah kept watch for adults. Lucas, the newest guardian, looked scared. "What does this psychologist want?" "To understand the tree," Marcus said grimly. "To study it, maybe to destroy it." "We can't let that happen," Sophie whispered. She was only 7, but her eyes held the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd found safety in the tree when she'd needed it most. "The tree saved us. We have to protect it." Hannah nodded. "We don't tell him anything. We stick to the same story. We found a sheltered spot, waited out the weather, got lucky. Nothing about the tree being special, nothing about the hourglass or time moving differently." "But what if he doesn't believe us?" James asked. His twin brother David finished the thought. "What if he keeps digging?" "Then we keep lying," Hannah said firmly. "The tree has kept our secret for centuries. We're not the ones who break it." Milo, lying under the table, thumped his tail in agreement. The next afternoon, Dr. Richard Vance arrived at Riverside Children's Home. He was younger than Hannah expected, maybe 40, with sandy hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than everything Hannah owned. He set up in the small counseling room, arranging a recorder and notebook with precise movements. When Hannah entered with Milo, he smiled warmly. "Hannah Carter, thank you for agreeing to speak with me." "I didn't agree," Hannah said, sitting in the chair across from him. "Mrs. Caldwell said I had to." Dr. Vance's smile didn't waver. "Fair enough. Let me explain what I'm researching. I'm interested in childhood resilience, how young people survive situations that should be impossible. You, for instance. You were lost in Miller's Forest during a rainstorm, temperature at 40 degrees, wearing inadequate clothing, yet you emerged completely unharmed after nearly 2 hours. That's remarkable. I got lucky. Did you?" He leaned forward. "Or did something else happen, something you haven't told the adults?" Hannah met his eyes steadily. "I found a sheltered spot and waited for the search team, that's all." "Describe this sheltered spot." "Under some trees, out of the rain." "Which trees?" Hannah shrugged. "I don't know tree species, just trees." Dr. Vance made a note. "The search team found you at the base of an unusually large tree, an ancient redwood that shouldn't exist this far north. Were you aware of that?" "No." "Did you go inside the tree?" Hannah's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. Inside? It's a tree. You can't go inside trees. This one has a hollow interior, a natural formation. Did you enter it? I don't remember. Dr. Vance studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a folder and opened it to reveal photographs. Hannah's breath caught. The photos showed the giant tree from multiple angles, close-ups of the entrance, and, her stomach dropped, images of the interior, including the hourglass. These were taken by a research team I sent to Miller's Forest last week, Dr. Vance said quietly. That tree is extraordinary, Hannah. The hollow interior shouldn't be structurally possible. And this object, he tapped the photo of the hourglass, appears to be hundreds of years old, yet shows no signs of decay. And according to my team's instruments, it's producing some kind of electromagnetic field they can't explain. Hannah said nothing. 6 children have been found near this tree over the past 6 months, all of them missing for extended periods, all of them unharmed, all of them unable or unwilling to explain how they survived. I don't believe in coincidences, Hannah. I think that tree is doing something important, and I think you know what it is. I don't know anything, Hannah said. Don't you want to help other children? If we can understand what makes that tree special, we could replicate it, create safe spaces for at-risk youth. Think of how many lives we could save. It sounded good, noble even, but Hannah heard what he wasn't saying. We could study it, control it, monetize it. We could turn something sacred into something profitable. There's nothing special about the tree, Hannah lied. It's just a tree. Dr. Vance's expression hardened slightly. I see. Well, thank you for your time, Hannah. I'll be interviewing the other children as well. Perhaps one of them will be more forthcoming. As Hannah left the room, her mind raced. Dr. Vance knew too much. His research team had been inside the tree, had photographed the hourglass, had probably tried to study it with their instruments and machines. The tree was in danger. Real danger. She found Marcus and the others waiting in the library. He knows, Hannah said without preamble. He's got photos of the hourglass. He's sending research teams. He wants to study the tree. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. No, he can't. The tree is for us, for children who need it. We have to do something, Marcus said. But what? We're just kids. What can we do against a scientist with money and equipment and adult authority? Hannah thought about Margaret, who'd spent 60 years protecting the tree by simply being its guardian, about the names carved into the bark, thousands of children over centuries who'd found safety there, about the voice she'd heard when she touched the hourglass. The tree will need children like you to stand as witnesses. We tell the truth, Hannah said, not to Dr. Vance, to someone who will actually listen. Who? Arya asked. Hannah pulled out her phone, a cheap prepaid model Mrs. Caldwell had given her for emergencies. She opened the browser and searched for Investigative Journalists Child Welfare. One name appeared repeatedly. Thomas Morrison at the Portland Tribune. He'd written dozens of articles exposing abuse in children's homes, fighting for better protections, giving voice to kids nobody else would listen to. Him, Hannah said, showing them the screen. We tell him everything. The tree, the hourglass, the time differences, all of it, and we ask him to help us protect it. Will he believe us? David asked. I don't know, Hannah admitted. But we have to try. That evening, Hannah composed an email on the library's shared computer. Dear Mr. Morrison, my name is Hannah Carter. I'm 9 years old and I live at Riverside Children's Home. I'm writing to you because something important is in danger and nobody else will listen. There's a tree in Miller's Forest, a giant redwood that shouldn't exist here. Inside it is an hourglass that makes time work differently. Children who are lost or scared or running from bad things find this tree and it keeps them safe. It gives them time to heal. It's been doing this for hundreds of years. Now, a scientist named Dr. Richard Vance wants to study the tree. He's sending research teams with equipment. He says he wants to help children, but I think he wants to control the tree. Maybe even destroy it, trying to understand how it works. We need someone to help us protect it, someone who believes that some things should stay sacred, someone who will listen to children when we say something matters. Please. The tree has saved 6 kids just this year. It saved me when I was lost and scared. If Dr. Vance destroys it, Where will the next lost child go? Sincerely, Hannah Carter. She attached photos she and Marcus had taken on their phones during a behavior's recent visit to the tree, images of the carved names, the hourglass, the golden light inside. Then she hit send and prayed it would be enough. Thomas Morrison arrived at Riverside Children's Home 3 days later. He was younger than Hannah expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a notebook that looked well used. Mrs. Caldwell seemed flustered by his presence, clearly not having expected a journalist to show up, asking to speak with Hannah. "I'm writing a story about children's experiences in the foster care system," Morrison explained smoothly. "Hannah's email was very articulate. I'd like to interview her about her time here, with your permission, of course." Mrs. Caldwell agreed reluctantly, and Hannah found herself once again in the counseling room, but this time with someone who might actually listen. Morrison closed the door and sat across from her. "Your email was interesting, Hannah. A magical tree that exists outside of time, an hourglass that protects lost children. It sounds like a fairy tale." Hannah's heart sank. "You don't believe me?" "I didn't say that." Morrison leaned forward. "I've been a journalist for 15 years. I've investigated child trafficking rings, exposed abuse in foster homes, documented things that sound impossible until you see the evidence. So I've learned not to dismiss things just because they sound strange. Tell me about this tree." Hannah told him everything. She described finding it during the rainstorm, the hollow interior, the hourglass with sand flowing upward. She told him about touching the glass and feeling the tree shiver, about stepping outside and finding time had changed, meeting Margaret in a different era, about how the tree had called to other lost children, Marcus, Sophie, all the others. She showed him the photos, the names carved into the bark, the hourglass glowing in the golden light. "And now Dr. Vance wants to study it," Hannah finished. "He thinks he can understand it scientifically, but I think some things aren't meant to be understood. Just protected." Morrison was quiet for a long time, studying the photos on Hannah's phone. Finally, he looked up. "I believe you." "You do?" "I've seen stranger things that turned out to be true. And more importantly, 6 children have been found at this tree's location over 6 months, all of them surviving impossible conditions. That's a pattern. Patterns mean something," he made notes in his book. "But here's the problem. Even if I write a story about this, most people won't believe it. They'll think it's a fairy tale or a hoax. We need more than testimony. We need proof." "What kind of proof?" "The kind that makes people stop and think. Scientific anomalies that can't be explained away. Documentation of the tree's effects on time, something that makes even skeptics pause." Hannah thought about that. "The hourglass affects time. If we could document that somehow." "Exactly." Morrison leaned forward. "Here's what I propose. Let me visit the tree, bring equipment to measure and document what's happening. If I can verify that time works differently there, that the hourglass is creating some kind of temporal field, then I'll have a story people can't ignore. One that might protect the tree from Dr. Vance's research teams." "When?" "Tonight, after dark, when we won't be interrupted. Can you meet me there?" Hannah nodded. "Me and the other guardians. We'll show you everything." That night, Hannah, Marcus, Sophie, and Morrison met at the giant tree under a crescent moon. Morrison had brought a backpack full of equipment, cameras, voice recorders, instruments Hannah didn't recognize. He stood at the tree's entrance, staring up at its massive trunk with an expression of awe. "It's incredible," he breathed. "I've never seen a redwood this large outside of California." "It's more than a tree," Sophie said softly. "It's a sanctuary." They crawled inside, Morrison following with his equipment. The interior was as Hannah remembered, warm despite the November cold, lit by that sourceless golden glow. The hourglass sat in the center, sand flowing upward in its eternal, impossible stream. Morrison set up his equipment with practiced efficiency. He placed several watches around the room, all synchronized to the exact same time. He set up cameras to record from multiple angles, and he pulled out what looked like a scientific instrument covered in blinking lights. "Temporal displacement sensor," he explained. "Borrowed from a physicist friend. If time really does work differently here, this should detect it." He activated the device. It immediately began beeping in a rapid staccato pattern, lights flashing red and yellow. Morrison stared at it in disbelief. That's not possible. According to this, we're experiencing temporal dilation. Time is passing at roughly 1/3 the rate it passes outside. 3 hours in here equals 1 hour out there. We told you, Marcus said. I know, but Morrison looked at the hourglass. Can I touch it? Hannah hesitated. It's safe, but it'll show you things. The tree has a voice. It'll speak to you. Morrison reached out and placed his hand on the glass. The tree shivered. The light blazed bright, and Morrison gasped as he heard what Hannah had heard months ago, the ancient voice that was wind and roots and centuries of protection. Thank you for coming, witness. Thank you for believing. Morrison pulled his hand back, trembling. My God, it's real. It's all real. Will you help us protect it? Hannah asked. Yes. Morrison's voice was firm despite his shaking hands. I'll write the story. I'll publish the evidence. And I'll make sure people understand that this tree needs to be left alone. They spent 2 hours in the tree, Morrison documenting everything with his equipment. When they finally emerged, his synchronized watches proved what the sensor had detected. They'd been inside for 2 hours, but outside less than 40. Minutes had passed. This is going to change everything, Morrison said quietly. People need to know that magic still exists in the world, that there are places where lost children can find safety. But as they walked back through the forest, headlights suddenly blazed through the trees. Dr. Vance stood beside a black SUV, flanked by 2 men in security uniforms. I thought you might try something like this, he said, his voice cold. Hannah Carter, Marcus Reed, Sophie Martinez, all documented as being in their beds at Riverside. Except you're not, are you? You're here, at my research site. This isn't your research site, Hannah said firmly. This is a sanctuary, and you need to leave it alone. I'm afraid I can't do that. Dr. Vance gestured to his security team. This tree represents a significant scientific discovery. I've already filed claims with the National Park Service. By next week, this will be a controlled research environment. You can't do that, Morrison said, stepping forward. I'm Thomas Morrison with the Portland Tribune. I have evidence that this tree is protecting vulnerable children. If you try to turn it into a lab, I'll publish everything. Evidence? Dr. Vance smiled. Video of some children sitting in a hollow tree. Testimony about feeling safe? That's not evidence, Mr. Morrison. That's anecdotal experience. Against that, I have electromagnetic readings, structural analyses, and scientific documentation of temporal anomalies. My evidence will hold up in court. Yours won't. He nodded to his security team. Escort these children back to Riverside. Mr. Morrison, if you trespass on this property again, I'll have you arrested. As the security guards moved forward, Hannah made a split-second decision. She turned and ran back to the tree, diving through the entrance with Milo at her heels. Marcus, Sophie, and Morrison followed instinctively. Inside, Hannah placed both hands on the hourglass and thought desperately, Please, help us. They're going to destroy you. The tree shivered, harder than it ever had before. The light blazed so bright Morrison had to shield his eyes, and the voice that spoke was different now, not gentle and patient, but ancient and powerful. They cannot destroy what they cannot understand, and they cannot control what chooses to leave. The sand in the hourglass suddenly reversed direction, flowing downward with impossible speed. The golden light grew brighter and brighter until the whole interior was blazing like a star. And then, everything went white. When Hannah's vision cleared, she was standing in the same hollow interior. But everything was different. The walls were different, smoother, lighter, made of wood that looked younger than before. The hourglass was still there, but its brass frame gleamed like it was newly polished. And when Hannah crawled to the entrance and looked out, she saw a forest that was completely unfamiliar. The trees were smaller, the undergrowth different. And there, where Miller's Forest should have stretching paths and hiking trails, was nothing but virgin wilderness. Where are we? Sophie whispered, clutching Hannah's hand. Morrison pulled out his phone. No signal. He checked his GPS. According to this, we're in the same location, same coordinates. But the date, he showed them the screen. The date read October 15th, 1924. The tree moved us, Marcus breathed. Back in time, to before there were scientists with equipment, before there were people who wanted to control it. The ancient voice spoke again, softer now. I protected you by taking you somewhere they cannot follow. This is my gift. Time is not a prison, but a refuge. Hannah understood. The tree hadn't just moved them through time, it had removed itself from Dr. Vance's reach entirely. By stepping into the past, the tree had made itself unfindable in the present. But we can't stay here, Morrison said, trying to stay calm despite the impossible situation. We have lives, families. We need to get back. You will return when it is safe, when those who would harm me have given up their search. How long? Hannah asked. 3 days in this time, 3 hours in yours. Hannah looked at the others. Marcus and Sophie seemed scared, but also strangely calm. They'd learned to trust the tree. Morrison looked like his entire understanding of reality was being rewritten. Okay, Hannah said, 3 days, we can do that. You will not be alone, the tree said. And as if summoned, a figure emerged from the forest. It was Margaret, not the elderly woman Hannah had met before, but younger. Maybe 40, with dark hair instead of white, moving with energy instead of exhaustion. I felt the tree shift, Margaret said, approaching with no fear despite finding strangers in the hollow. That hasn't happened in years. You must be in great danger for the tree to move you like this. You're Margaret, Hannah said in wonder. But younger. We're in 1924 before you became old, waiting for me to find you in my time. Margaret smiled. Time is complicated near the tree. But yes, I'm Margaret Thorne, and I've been the tree's guardian for 15 years now. You're welcome to stay with me until the tree decides it's safe to send you home. Over the next 3 days, they lived in Margaret's small cabin, learning about her life as a guardian. She explained that the tree had chosen its location carefully. Far from civilization in 1924, it would remain undisturbed for decades. But eventually, as the world grew and changed, the tree would face threats from those who wanted to study it, control it, exploit it. That's why it needs guardians, Margaret said. People who understand that some things should remain mysterious. That protection is more important than understanding. Morrison spent hours interviewing Margaret, documenting everything with his camera and notebook. He was a journalist to his core. Even stranded in the past, he wanted to record the truth. On the 3rd day, the tree's voice spoke. It is time. Return to your era. The threat has passed. They said goodbye to Margaret, who hugged each of them and whispered, I'll see you again, Hannah, in a very long time when you're 8 and lost in the rain. Until then, protect the tree. Hannah and the others entered the tree one last time. The hourglass glowed bright, sand reversing direction again, and they were back. Same forest. But when they emerged, they found Miller's forest exactly as they'd left it, except Dr. Vance's SUV was gone. Morrison checked his phone. 3 hours had passed, just 3 hours, while they'd spent 3 days in 1924. They walked back to the parking area and found a note pinned to a tree. Research suspended. Temporal anomalies too unstable to study safely. Equipment malfunctions made documentation impossible. Site declared off-limits pending further review. Dr. R. Vance. Hannah smiled. The tree had protected itself by removing its most interesting feature, the temporal field. For the exact 3 hours Dr. Vance would have been studying it, the tree had made itself scientifically uninteresting. No evidence, no anomalies, nothing to justify further research. It outsmarted him, Marcus said in awe. Morrison was already typing notes on his phone. I'm still writing the story, but not about science or temporal anomalies, about children finding sanctuary, about places that exist to protect the vulnerable, about why some things should be preserved, not studied. He looked at Hannah. Thank you for trusting me with this. I promise to tell it right. The next day, Morrison's article appeared in the Tribune. The Guardian Tree. How one ancient redwood became a sanctuary for lost children. The story didn't mention the hourglass or time travel. Instead, it focused on the pattern of children being found safe at the tree's location, the psychological importance of having safe spaces in nature, and the need to preserve certain places as sanctuaries rather than turning them into research sites. It went viral. Within days, Miller's forest had been designated a protected area. No research, no development, no interference, just preservation. Dar Vance published a response claiming Morrison's article was unscientific and emotional, but nobody cared. The public had decided some things were more important than understanding. Some places needed to stay mysterious. The tree was safe, and Hannah, Marcus, Sophie, and the other guardians knew their job was just beginning. There would be other lost children, other threats, other people who wanted to control or study or exploit the tree. But the guardians would be there, protecting the sanctuary, keeping the secret, just as Margaret had done for 60 years, just as thousands of children had done over centuries. The giant tree stood patient and eternal, its hourglass hidden inside, waiting for the next child who would need its shelter. And Hannah knew, with absolute certainty, that she would spend her life making sure that child could find it. 18-year-old Hannah Carter stood at the entrance of the giant tree, her hand resting on Milo's collar. The golden retriever was old now, 14 years, his muzzle completely gray, his steps slower than they used to be. But he'd insisted on coming with her today, just like he'd insisted on being by her side for every important moment of her life. Today was important. Hannah looked at the group of 5 teenagers gathered around her, all between 15 and 17, all former residents of various children's homes, all brought together by the same purpose. Marcus Reed stood at her right, now 17 and about to start college. Sophie Martinez, 16, held a notebook where she'd been documenting the tree's history. James and David Chen, the twins, were 15 now and inseparable as always, and Aria Santos, 17, carried a backpack full of supplies. They were the Council of Guardians, the name they'd given themselves 3 years ago when they'd realized the tree needed more than just secret keepers. It needed active protectors, people who would find lost children and guide them to safety, people who would stand between the tree and anyone who threatened it. "Everyone ready?" Hannah asked. They nodded. Today they were bringing new guardians to the tree. 3 children who'd recently been found wandering near Miller's Forest, all of them lost or running from something, all of them drawn to the tree the way guardians always were. 10-year-old Elena had run from an abusive foster home. 8-year-old Kai had gotten separated from a school trip and somehow survived 4 days in the wilderness. And 6-year-old Maya had been found sleeping at the base of the tree, unable to explain where she'd been for the 72 hours she'd been missing. All 3 showed the signs, the small symbol carved into their palms that wouldn't wash away, the distant look in their eyes like they'd seen something impossible, the way they kept looking toward Miller's Forest, like it was calling them home. "They're waiting at the parking lot," Marcus said, checking his phone. "Thomas is with them." Thomas Morrison had become more than just a journalist who'd written about the tree. Over the past decade, he'd become the Guardian's adult ally, helping place former foster children in good homes, running interference with authorities when needed, and documenting the tree's legacy in ways that protected rather than exposed it. They walked through the forest, following paths that Hannah knew by heart now. She'd been coming here for 10 years, ever since that rainy day when she'd first stumbled through the entrance and found the hourglass. The tree had saved her life that day, not from physical danger, but from the crushing loneliness and fear that came with being orphaned and alone. Now she wanted to give that same gift to others. At the parking lot, Morrison waited with the 3 children. Elena stood with her arms crossed defensively. Kai fidgeted nervously. Little Maya clung to Morrison's hand, her eyes huge and solemn. "Hannah," Morrison said warmly, "they're ready." Hannah knelt down to Maya's level. "Hi, my name is Hannah. This is Milo. We're going to show you something amazing today, something that's going to help you feel safe. Is that okay?" Maya nodded slowly. "Good. Follow me." They walked into the forest as a group, the older guardians surrounding the younger children protectively. Hannah led them through the trees, watching as Elena's defensive posture gradually softened, as Kai's fidgeting slowed, as Maya's grip on Morrison's hand relaxed. The forest had that effect. The closer you got to the tree, the more you felt its presence, calm, patient, protective. And then the tree appeared through the foliage, and all 3 children stopped dead. "Whoa," Kai whispered. "It's so big," Elena breathed. Maya just stared, her eyes filling with tears. "I remember. I was here before." "Yes," Hannah said gently. "The tree called you here, when you needed safety. Now we're bringing you back so you can understand what it is, what it means." They approached the entrance and Hannah gestured for the three children to go first. Elena crawled through, then Kai, then Maya. The older guardians followed, Milo squeezing through last despite his age and size. Inside, the golden light welcomed them. The hourglass sat in the center, sand flowing upward in its eternal, impossible stream. Maya ran to it immediately, placing both small hands on the glass. "I remember this. It made me warm when I was cold. It made time stop so I could rest." The tree shivered gently. The ancient voice spoke, soft enough that only those who were meant to hear it could. "Welcome home, little ones. You are safe here. Always." Elena's tough exterior cracked. Tears streamed down her face as she touched the hourglass. "I've never been safe anywhere. Never." "You're safe now," Sophie said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "This is your sanctuary, and we're your family. All of us guardians, we protect each other, and we protect this tree." Over the next hour, Hannah and the other older guardians explained everything to the three children. They told them about the tree's history, centuries of protecting lost children, giving them time to heal, offering shelter from storms both literal and metaphorical. They explained about the hourglass, how it controlled time, how it could move people through moments and years when protection was needed. They told them about Margaret, who Hannah had met twice now, once as an elderly woman at the end of her guardianship, once as a younger woman in 1924. They showed them the names carved into the bark outside, thousands upon thousands of children who'd found safety here over the ages, and they explained what it meant to be a guardian. "It's not a job," Marcus said seriously. "It's a calling. You don't get paid. You don't get recognition. Most people will never know what you do, but you'll know. And the children you help will know. And that's enough." "What do we have to do?" Kai asked. "Listen," Hannah said. "When you hear about a child who's lost or scared or running from something terrible, you listen to that feeling in your gut that says they need the tree. And then you find a way to guide them here. Sometimes that's easy. You just tell them about a place in Miller's Forest where they can find shelter. Sometimes it's harder. But you always find a way. And we protect the tree," Arya added. "From people who want to study it, control it, exploit it. We keep the secret. We make sure it stays safe for the next generation of children who will need it." "Can we come back?" Maya asked. "Whenever we want?" "Always," Hannah promised. "This is your sanctuary too. You can come here to rest, to think, to remember that you're not alone. The tree will always welcome you." Elena looked around the hollow interior, at the golden light and the impossible hourglass in the faces of the older guardians who'd once been lost children themselves. "I thought I'd never belong anywhere, that I'd always be just passing through." "You belong here," Sophie said firmly. "You're a guardian now. That means you have a family, us, and you have a purpose, protecting this place and helping other kids find it." "Forever?" Kai asked. "Forever," the guardians said in unison. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the tree, the older guardians sharing stories of children they'd helped, challenges they'd faced, moments when the tree had saved lives in ways that seemed impossible. Marcus told about the time he'd found a 12-year-old girl being trafficked and had managed to get her to the tree, where time had slowed enough for authorities to track her location and raid the trafficking ring. Sophie shared how she'd helped a 7-year-old boy who'd been lost in a blizzard find the tree, where he'd sheltered for what felt like hours but was only minutes outside, emerging just as rescue. Teams arrived. The twins talked about bringing their younger sister to the tree after their parents died, how it had given all three of them time to grieve together before being separated into different foster homes. And Hannah told them about her first time finding the tree, about meeting Margaret in a different time, about learning that some things in the world were still magical and good and worth protecting. As the sun began to set, they emerged from the tree together. The three new guardians looked different now, less scared, more purposeful. They'd found something bigger than themselves to believe in. Morrison was waiting at the parking lot with hot chocolate from a thermos. "How'd it go?" "They're ready," Hannah said, accepting a cup gratefully. The tree accepted them. "Good," Morrison smiled. "I've been working on placements for all three. Good homes, thoroughly vetted. Elena will go to a family in Portland who specifically requested an older child. Kai's being placed with a single father who's a park ranger. He'll be close to the forest. And Maya? He looked at Hannah meaningfully. Alice Chen has been asking about adopting again. She fostered you for 6 months, right? Hannah nodded. Alice had been one of the FBI-vetted foster parents after the whole Mitchell Energy situation years ago. She'd been kind, patient, everything a scared 9-year-old needed. They'd stayed in touch even after Hannah had moved to a long-term placement with another family. Maya would be good with Alice, Hannah said. Alice understands about needing safety, about healing from trauma. I'll make the arrangements, Morrison promised. Over the next few weeks, the 3 new guardians settled into their placements. Hannah visited each of them regularly, making sure they were adjusting well, reminding them they weren't alone. And slowly, inevitably, the Council of Guardians began to change. Marcus left for college, studying social work so he could better help at-risk youth. Sophie got accepted to a writing program where she could document the stories of foster children and advocate for better protections. The twins moved in with their aunt, who'd finally been approved for custody. Arya stayed in town, working at a youth shelter while taking community college classes. And Hannah had decisions to make. On Hannah's 18th birthday, she sat in the tree alone except for Milo, thinking about her future. She'd been accepted to several colleges, had scholarship offers, could study psychology, social work, journalism, anything that would let her continue helping children. She could leave Miller's Forest, build a career, come back to visit the tree a few times a year. Or she could stay, become what Margaret had been, a full-time guardian, dedicating her life to protecting the tree and helping lost children find it. "What should I do, boy?" she asked Milo. The old dog rested his head in her lap, tail wagging weakly. "Whatever you choose, I'll be with you." But Hannah knew that wasn't entirely true. Milo was 14. Golden retrievers rarely lived past 15. Soon she'd have to face the world without him. The thought made her eyes sting with tears. As if sensing her sadness, the tree's voice spoke. "You have been a faithful guardian, Hannah, but you don't have to choose one path forever. The tree will always be here. You can leave, learn, grow, and return. Or you can stay and grow here. Both paths lead to the same place, helping children find safety." "But who will watch the tree if I leave? The tree has watched itself for centuries, and there are other guardians now. Elena shows great promise as a protector. Young Maya has the gift of finding lost children before they even know they're lost. Kai has the forest knowledge to guide people here safely. You've built something that will continue without you." "But I don't want to leave," Hannah whispered. "This place saved me. How can I just walk away?" "You won't walk away. You'll carry it with you. Every child you help will be an extension of the tree's protection. Every story you tell will keep the tree safe. Every guardian you train will preserve its legacy." Hannah thought about that. About Margaret, who'd spent 60 years in physical proximity to the tree. About all the other guardians over the centuries who'd probably faced the same choice. "There's another way," a voice said. Hannah looked up to find Morrison standing at the entrance, looking apologetic for interrupting. "Sorry, I saw you come in and figured you might need to talk," he said. "I've been thinking about your situation, about what happens when guardians grow up and have to make choices. And? What if we formalized this, created an actual organization, the Guardian Foundation? We'd help place foster children in good homes, advocate for better child welfare policies, and secretly guide lost children to the tree when they need it. You could run it. Use your experience as a guardian to help others while staying connected to this place." Hannah's heart lifted. "That could work. I could go to college, study what I need to learn, and then come back and build something permanent." "Exactly. The trees. Been protecting children one at a time for centuries. But with a foundation, with resources and organization, you could amplify that protection. Help hundreds of children instead of dozens." "But what about the secret? About the tree itself?" "That stays secret," Morrison said firmly. "The foundation would operate openly as a child welfare organization. But we'd know the real mission, guiding lost children here when they need sanctuary. Only guardians would know about the tree's true nature." Hannah stood, energy flooding through her. "I want to do it, build the foundation, but I'll need help." "You'll have it," Morrison promised. "I'll help fund it. Alice Chen has already said she'd volunteer, and every guardian who ages out of foster care will have a place in the organization. We'll build something that lasts." Hannah placed her hand on the hourglass one more time. Thank you for everything, for saving me, for protecting all of us. I promise I'll use what you gave me to help as many children as I can. The tree shivered gently. I know you will, faithful one. Go build your legacy. 23-year-old Hannah Carter stood on the steps of the Guardian Foundation's new headquarters, a converted house on the edge of Miller's Forest, close enough to the tree for guardians to visit easily, far enough from the city for privacy. Inside, former foster children worked as counselors, advocates, and case managers. Alice Chen ran the placement program, matching children with carefully vetted foster families. Morrison managed the legal advocacy division, fighting for better child welfare policies. And in the forest, young guardians like Elena, Maya, and Kai continued the work, finding lost children, guiding them to the tree, keeping the secret safe. Milo was gone now. He'd passed away peacefully 2 years ago at 16, held in Hannah's arms to the very end. But Hannah had a new golden retriever now, a puppy she'd named Hope, who showed the same intuitive understanding that Milo had possessed. The foundation had helped 300 children in its first 5 years. Not all of them had gone to the tree. Most just needed good homes and supportive services. But 37 had been true guardians, children who'd found the tree when they needed it most and had dedicated themselves to protecting it. Hannah checked her watch. In 10 minutes, she was meeting with a reporter from National Geographic who wanted to write about the foundation's work. She'd have to be careful, tell the story of helping foster children without revealing the tree's secret. But she'd gotten good at that over the years, good at walking the line between truth and mystery. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya, now 11 and living happily with Alice. Found a new one. Girl, age 7, lost near the tree. Bringing her in now. Hannah smiled. Another lost child finding sanctuary. Another life saved. The tree's work continued. And through the foundation, through the guardians, through the children who'd found safety and were now helping others find it too, the tree's protection extended far beyond its hollow interior. Hannah looked toward the forest, toward the giant tree she couldn't see from here but knew was there, patient and eternal. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. And somewhere in the forest, in a hollow tree with an impossible hourglass, golden light glowed a little brighter. The tree heard her. It always would. Because guardians and sanctuary were bound together forever, protecting each other, helping lost children find their way home. And as long as there were children who needed safety, the tree would be there. Always. If you were lost in a forest searching for a way out and came across a tree like this, one that changed your fate, what would you do? Or have you ever experienced something like this? If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you next time.